Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and tonight we're taking a nice evening flight in the wonderful TBM-930 from Las Vegas, Nevada down to Phoenix, Arizona. Just a quick skip and a hop, and should be a fun little flight. We're expecting to be an evening flight, probably coming into a night landing in Phoenix, so if that's something that interests you, by all means stick around, guys. If you are interested in learning how to fly the TBM-930 from Microsoft Flight Simulator, consider joining my Patreon site, level tier 2 or above, which gives you access to all of my guides, which include the A320, the G1000, and now the recently released Cessna Citation Longitude. These guides include everything from cockpit tours to full instructionals on how to use all the systems, creating your flight plans, as well as the different types of approaches and takeoffs that are available to the different aircrafts. They are extremely detailed, full with pictures and identifying markers to make your flight sim experience with this aircraft as easy as possible. Again, link down to my Patreon site found in the description below. All right, folks, so jumping right into it, we are going to first start out with creating our flight plan in SimBrief, walking you guys through everything step by step. Now, I have had some people say that I've been talking very quickly when doing these videos, so I'm going to try to slow things down. I do get going and get talking a little quickly, but I'll try to keep it minimal today. So first thing on SimBrief here, we need to enter in our departure airport. A little typo there. Down to KPHX. Airframe is going to be the TBM-900 series. You're going to find it all the way down at the bottom here. Climb profile looking at 170 knots, and then Mach 0.4 once we get up into Mach range. If we get that high, we'll see how high it sends us today. Looking at departure runway of 08 left, arrival runway of 08. We want to make sure we set our reserve fuel to 45 minutes for an IFR flight. Extra fuel we're going to leave as default. Passengers and cargo as default as well. Not too concerned about that. Same thing with flight number and airlines, especially when dealing with the TBM. Alright, it looks like we're going to be coming off the Razzler 2 SID, flying direct to Zane, from Zane to Wotro. Wotro? I never know how to make these, or spell these out. And then going over to the Bruiser 1. So let's go ahead and come up top and hit Generate OFP, or Operational Flight Plan. Once our flight plan is generated, I like to do the print view for PDF. Makes it a bit easier to walk through everything. Now, real quickly, just walking through a really high-level overview here. You can see here's our departure and arrival runways. Flight level, we're going to be going up to 290 today, so 29,000 feet. Here's our block fuel. This is the total fuel that needs to be on board before we leave the ramp there. And here is our route. So again, we're using the Razzler 2 to the Zane transition, from Zane direct to Wotro, jumping onto the Bruiser 1 star into the Phoenix 08 approach. So let's go ahead and pull that off screen. Let's get our aircraft weighted and fueled. So our fuel again was, I believe, 1,073 pounds of fuel today. So we're just going to grab this guy here. And I just like to get it close. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like 1,076, that's perfect. Payload, we can see what the payload is today. So what you're going to be looking for payload is this number. Where are you? Right here. Looking for 1,150 pounds. And so we can just move this up, set it as 1,100. There we go, 49. I'll take that. CG still looks good. No concerns there, but we can move some people around. Hey, passengers, I need this guy to sit over here, that one to sit over there. Put your left shoe on the tray table. All right, now let's get the engine started. All right, so before we start our engines, let's walk through the cockpit check, make sure everything's golden. First thing we're going to do is close these doors up. I'm going to head onto the back here. Pick my head up, grab the handle, bring it down. The TBM-930 improvement mod adds a lot of features, including even locking our doors. So again, come down over here, lock the door, green for locked, red for unlocked. And now let's walk through a quick check. Air conditioning system needs to be off for engine start. Moving down, making sure all anti-ice and inertial separators are off. Parking brake is set. Landing gear handle is down. Pressurization switch is to the off position. Hot airflow should be down at the floorboard for engine start. Make sure our throttle is in cutoff. Fuel tank selected. Flaps are retracted. Alternate air static source, or alternate static air source, I should say, is pushed in and closed, meaning that it is off. All circuit breakers are pushed in and closed as well. Now let's move up to the top for a second, do a quick scan. Taxi lights are off. All lights are off. Panel lights you set as desired once the battery is on. Battery is off. Generator is off. Oxygen off. Starter should be in the off position. Ignition should be in the on position for engine start. Auxiliary boost pumps to on as well when it's time. So sorry, I meant to click that all the way down to off. Fuel selection should be set to manual. Autopilot trim system is off, and emergency locator transmitter is set to the arm position or the center position. All right, so now let's walk through the startup. So first thing we do is kick that battery on. Put on our nav lights. She doesn't have an anti-collision light. You have your pulse light and your strobe light. Both of those are supposed to be, we do our strobe light at takeoff, and we do the pulse light once we're airborne. All right, main generator goes to on. Coming on down to the G3000, the MFD, give that a tap, turn her on. Come back up top again. And at this point, we're going to again set ignition to on, auxiliary boost pumps to on. And now we're going to take our starter and give it a 1 Mississippi and 2 Mississippi on the on position. So 1 and 2. All right, this can be a little bit hard to see, and you move pretty quickly here, but you're looking for your NG percent to get to 13%. Once you get to 13%, you're going to move your throttle into the first position to low idle. And what this will do is induce fuel into the engine. At 53%, we'll be moving into high idle and then up over the gate into flight idle. You can clear your master caution. There's 53%. So we're going to left click and hold it, move it forward into the high idle position. And then while still holding left click, we're going to give it a right click tap. And you know what? I just realized I am on the wrong control scheme, so give me just a second. Alright, so we are back in action here. Now you can see I got to adjust a few things now. Take our flaps, bring them all the way up. No concerns there. A couple things that happen when I switch the controls. No biggie. Alright, so now with the engine running and at idle, I'm just going to cycle my throttle quick, make sure we're truly at idle. And now let's go back up top. We're going to go ignition to auto, auxiliary boost pumps to auto, fuel selection to auto. Autopilot trim system can now go to the on position, and oxygen does come on at engine start, according to the pilot's operational handbook for the real-world aircraft. Alright, and now we can move our way back around for some final checks here in the cockpit. Air conditioning, we want to make sure we turn that back on as desired. We don't want to get hot up there. Parking brake obviously remains on. Landing gear lights test. Let's do a quick test, make sure all lights are functioning. Good. And then hit that check down, and we're looking for these 3 lights to flash, indicating the gear is down and locked. Bleed switch, you want max diff or auto. It's important to remember max diff is going to be less comfortable for your passengers, but will pressurize the aircraft the fastest. And auto obviously creates a smoother transition. Hot airflow can now go back to as you desire. And then we are set to roll. So at this point, let's go ahead and set our barometric pressure. So 2970. We can also simulate that we've gotten our transponder clearance or our flight clearance. So let's go to our transponder code. And let's say we got 3615. Today is our transponder code, and we're just going to leave that in standby until we hit the runway. So let's press enter. And we are good to go there. Cockpit is set and ready to enter in our flight plan. So let's do that now. To enter in our lovely flight plan today, we're going to go to the PFD menu. Scratch that, MFD menu. Going to go to flight plan. Our origin is where we are now. So Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra for Viva Las Vegas. And then add destination to brutally hot Phoenix, Arizona. A city I never recommend driving in. Although people will say the same thing about Tucson, so I guess I can't say too much. All right, so we have our departure and our destination airfield. So now let's come over here to procedures and enter in our SID, our standard instrument departure. Now I'm gonna go back over here to our flight route for a second. And remember, we're looking for the Razzler 2, so we're gonna scroll on down. There it is. At least I hope I'm saying these right. Zane is the transition point today, so no concerns there. And our departure runway is 08 left according to this. But you know what? This is something that I actually do like to confirm with ATC. So let's just get the ATIS.
This is Las Vegas
08 right. We're good to go.
Landing runway.
And then we'll just throw on ground for now. They'll probably do some chat in the background, but that's alright. Let's go ahead and select our runway. So we are using 08 right. Oh no, 08 left, excuse me. 08 left. And hit load. Alright, our star has been loaded, or our SID, excuse me, has been loaded. We can go to the arrival now, and we are using the Bruiser one. There it is. And let's figure out what the transition point for today is going to look like, and we're going to be using Navigraph to do that. Now normally I would be using my Navigraph charts because I do find it easier. If you have access to Navigraph in the aircraft, you have access to the charts. But for the interest of displaying what the aircraft is capable of, let's go ahead and use it. This can take a second. Sometimes you have to relink it. If we do, not a big worry. Sometimes I can get away with just typing in the airfield again and it will load. But not today. So if you run into this, we're going to go to Utilities, Setup, Database, Navigraph Charts. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to open up a browser, and you're just going to have to sign in to Navigraph. It does this automatically. So I just clicked Sign In, and we're waiting for a moment. Now a pop-up comes up and says, on my browser, you will now link working title G3000 to your account. I'm going to hit OK. And then just hit Yes, Allow. It's just basically saying the information that we are approving this link. Once that's done, you can now click Link Account. And good to go. Now let's go back to the home and go to Charts. And there we go. Alright, so the other thing I like to do is go to Chart Options and put this to the dark mode. Call me a vampire. White is too bright. Okay, so next we're going to go to our departure. Or excuse me, actually we want our SID, isn't it? That's what we're looking at. No, we want our star. Gosh, I'm not thinking tonight, guys. So Phoenix, press enter. At least I'm doing the procedure right. And again, finding that Bruiser 1. And now let's zoom in and see what we've got going on here. So there's tense, the transition point. This would be from here on to the approach. And then down here would be Wartro, so that's what we're using. We're using Wartro. Remember, we saw that on our waypoints. So, perfect. That way you can actually visualize it. And then we're going to come down this way and down into the airport. And 08 right, I think is going to bring us this way and down that way. So let's go ahead and find our transitions and change it. And our runway for today, we're looking for 08. And now we'll just hit load. And no worries. Now I'm going to leave the approach as is for now. As we get closer, we may want to change that approach based on the wind direction, what's going on there. So let's go ahead and move on forward. Sorry, I got a text message of someone telling me that I spoke with them last year if rates remained low and high and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, sure I did. Anyway, now let's go back to the moving map here. Our flight plan is actually, let's go ahead. We'll load in the procedure for the approach. Let's just get it done. And then if it changes, we can always change it. We're going to be using, let's use ILS today. And our transition point, Alice is the only one, so no worries there. Go ahead and hit load. All right, there it goes. I've seen it do that before, and sometimes you just have to move the screen around. Alright, now another question that came up today was someone asked me if the ability to scroll the map was broken, so let's find out. So we're going to find our range queue here. We're going to click on it, and then you just move your mouse around, holding left click down, and it looks like it's working just fine, bud. So just make sure that you left click and hold, and then you can move the mouse. And the pan will only work when the mouse reaches the limits of the screen. I hope that solves your problem. If you're still having trouble, then I would recommend maybe completely removing the G3000 and adding it back in. Alright guys, so we've got our flight plan entered, we've got our pre-start done, well the engine start is done, so now let's go ahead and set our speed bugs, and we'll be ready to get out of here. So this is what I'm talking about. See, it's not working. If you guys run into this situation, just move your camera. See? All's good. Rotation speed, we're actually looking at 95 knots. We will be using the 124 knots best speed. And our approach speed is 85 knots, so we'll be leaving that on as well. So speed bugs are set. Someone asked me why I wasn't using those anymore, and the honest to God's truth is just I memorized them and got lazy. Let's call it what it is. I got to bite the bullet where I have to bite the bullet. Okay, so now let's move into... How did ATIS get to playing again? See, this is why the radio drives me nuts. I don't even know how ATIS started. Okay, we're going to stay quiet now? Okay. Alright, so as I was about to say, let's go ahead and set up our autopilot system. So flight directors are turned on. Initial altitude today, we're going to be climbing up to 9,000 on the initial climb. And we are going to climb via the star. So actually, let's take a look at that real quick. I am going to use the charts for this one. It's so much faster. But it is handy to have it in the aircraft, especially if you only have one monitor. I've got 3 of them, so I've got real estate to spare. So we're searching for Las Vegas. We're finding the SID. Sorry, is what I'm looking at. I'm going to get that wrong all night long. I don't know why I'm doing that today. Alright, and the Razzler 2 RNAV departure is what we're using. And we're climbing out, so initial altitude, we need to be above 4,000 at maximum of 230 knots. Over to cells, below 8,000, and then above 7,000 at T-tone, and there's our 9,000 mark. But you know what? TBM climbs pretty quick. I don't think it climbs quite that fast, but just to be safe, let's go ahead and set our initial climb out to 8,000. Just to be safe. We don't want to bust our altitudes. And this is how I typically fly when I'm not using ATC. I still try to keep it as realistic as I can most of the time. Sometimes I just say, you know, whatever, and I just fly to whatever I want. Alright, so we've got our barometric pressure set. We have our initial altitude set. Now let's set our flight level control, and we're going to be looking for 124 knots. Once we get airborne, we will accelerate that to 170 knots. There she goes. Alright, 124 knots. All set. And we need to make sure our CDI is set to our FMS. And now we are ready to get on out of here. So let's set up the rest of this aircraft and get going. Alright, we got our head turned on here. Looking good there. Inertial separator needs to come on now for taxi. For those of you unaware, the purpose of the inertial separator is to keep foreign object debris out of the engine. So there's a little shaft that closes up just under the intake. So if we take a look at the intake here, what happens in pre-flight with the inertial separator turned off is airflow comes in through here and then freely, is taken into the engine and used for combustion. Right? Well, the problem with, when you're taxiing or in icy weather, or clouds, or rain, you take the risk of debris, whether it be ice, a rock, whatever, a bird, getting sucked in and actually going to the engine, damaging it. So what the inertial separator does is puts like a screen here, if you will, and there's this high-level explanation. But it basically blocks any kind of debris from getting taken in there. Debris gets shot down the back of the collector if memory serves. And that's why you lose some horsepower. So the thing about the inertial separator is it protects the engine, but you lose horsepower, which is why you get a master caution as well, letting you know that it is turned on. All right, so at this point now, let's come up top, turn our taxi light on. Nav light's already on, cabin lights were good. Just doing one last quick sweep through, making sure that the aircraft is truly ready for us. I don't know why that happened. I hate it when it does this. Drives me crazy, man. I don't know why that throttle is even working. It shouldn't even be working. Alright, I think we're good. And the flaps went back down. Come on, man. Sorry guys, that stuff gets frustrating. Alright, let's go ahead and taxi out of here. So we're going to release our parking brake, and let's get on over to 0 right. Before I do that, I'm going to pull the taxi information and see where we're at here. And what did I say? 08 left, right? So there's 8 right. There's 8 left. So easy taxi over to the runway there. No worries there. Alright, so we're on the taxi now. Taxiing up here up to Foxtrot. Hanging right. Looks like we're actually on hotel first. Actually, I think hotel will work. I think we can take it all the way down to the entry of 08 left. 08 left is a huge runway, 14,000 feet long. 14.5. That is a big runway. Very large runway. Adjust my seat there, sorry about that. Alright, we're going to bypass this first turnoff. That would take us over to Delta. Taxiing a little fast, let's slow her down a bit. Let's hold short. Checking for traffic. Up top. Landing lights on. Strobe light on. And let's take the run. Now, as I actually line up on the runway is when I will set my flaps. So we always try to keep the flaps retracted during taxi, because they hang very low to the ground. And we obviously don't want to, again, pitch anything up and damage the flap surface. So this is close enough at this point. Going for flaps 1. Always check for traffic approaching any runway. As we're lining up here, I'm going to tap the heading bug. Aligns the heading bug with our current heading, or the runway heading. Alright, these large arrows means that we are clear to accelerate at this point, so let's go ahead and set takeoff power. Setting that torque to about 98%, 99%. Watching that crosswind there. It's 80 knots, looking for 95 for rotation. There it is, pulling up. Oh, a little bumpy coming out. Positive rate, gear up. 115 knots, flaps can come up. she is, Las Vegas. Keeping on manual control for right now. I'm just enjoying the takeoff. Trimming her out a little bit. Having to hold a lot of back pressure on the yoke right now. Looks like we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride. Easy peasy. Again, watching that altitude there, you can see that we're climbing very fast. That's kind of what I was worried about. So we're looking for... Zoom in here a little bit. Come on. Oh, not on the map. That would help. MFD. Oh, fell off course. It's the only problem with simulations. You can't feel when they move. We wouldn't normally be having to use a mouse to find our screens, right? Also moving over to Navigraph charts, jumping back on the SID. We'll be on back with us in just a second here. I know it sort of throws things off, but I'm trying to get my charts up here. The reason why I'm doing this manually is I rely on the autopilot too frequently. I'm always flying the autopilot. 6,000 feet, clear skies here. We can go ahead and turn off the inertial separator. Although we're going to turn our pitot heats on. I should have done that before takeoff, and we are going to put on our anti-ice. I would not be surprised if we get some stormy weather coming into Phoenix. And so we are approaching... I'm not quite sure. I just noticed. Oh, that's why. So shame on me. And this is what I was talking about, me relying on the autopilot too frequently. So because I'm always used to engaging the autopilot, I didn't think to turn on the nav mode, so I got the CDI guidance. So we were sort of just flying off on our own over there. So these are the things that you can spoil yourself with. Like I said, it was a viewer actually in the Longitude who told me, he's like, hey man, like you're relying so much on the autopilot, like fly the plane, she's fun to fly. Come on, trim. I can't tell if my trim button's actually working. There it goes. It wasn't working there for a second. And it's just my forward trim. I have to have it just the right position, and if I don't, then it doesn't register it. But all the other trims on the hat work just fine. There we go. Let's set our altitude bugs. Remember, we're going to 29,000 feet today. We're clear anything above 8,000 at this point, so we're going to go all the way up. And if I want that guidance again, we can either pull it up, do the flight level change. Alright, for anyone joining us at this point, we are continuing our climb to flight level 290, going 29,000 feet. Flying things manually, so it's a little goofy right now. And actually, we're up at 10,000 feet. I think we will go ahead and engage the autopilot. So yaw dampers on, autopilot on. Flight level control should take over from here. We're going to set that flight level speed for 170 knots. Well, above 10,000 feet now, we can turn our landing lights off. Everything else is still good. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the head tracker. All right, so we're in a nice good climb. Got a good tailwind pushing us along, which is nice today. It's like 9 knots. That'll be helpful. At 18,000 feet, we'll be switching our altimeter back to 29092. ATI still looks good. Outside air temperature looks like we're already looking at 7 degrees. So we probably don't need windshield and prop ice. We'll leave everything else on, but it may not get that cold. We'll see what the weather's like as we start approaching Tucson or Phoenix. It's pretty nasty in Tucson. We got a nice storm system hanging overhead right now, so that's kind of what I'm expecting to happen. But who knows? I might be pleasantly surprised with a nice clear sky. But anyway, guys, so next stop is at 18,000 feet. I'll catch you there where we switch the altimeter back to standard. And then I'll catch you guys at cruise where we calculate our top of descent. All right, so we've just passed through 18,000 feet. So we just give our barometer a tap, 29092, and set it up here as well. All right. Clear 18,000 feet, so at this point now we're just going to be hanging tight until we get all the way up to cruise. Once we've leveled off at cruise, we will do our VNAV calculations for our descent. Alright, so we're just about to level off at cruise here. So now that we're up here, we're out of altitude mode. What is happening there? Hang on a second. Oh, it's just the... I see. Alright, no worries. It's because we're at such a small distance. So let me scan that out a little bit. Alright, so next thing is to set up our top of descent. Now, there's a couple different ways that things that we need to look at in order to do so first. So let's bring up Navigraph charts again. We're going to look at our star. And what did we say? We're coming on the Bruiser, right? Oh, wrong airport. And there's the Bruiser. So what we're going to be looking at here, let's see, where's our transition? Here's Watro, so here's where we're going to be coming in. So flight level 200 at Watro, okay? Watro to Bruiser, we're going to be maintaining 20,000 feet. And by Mayer here, we need to be at 270 knots or below. In our case, I don't think we're going to hit 270 knots. At flight level between flight level 250 and 19,000 feet. So we'll set our target for 19,000. Then coming down here to Bruiser, we're going to be looking at 17,000 to 13,000. And so what we're looking at here is for our approach transition point. So let's figure out where our star ends today. How we're going to do that is we're going to come down here, go to our flight plan. Here's our start. So we're going to find out what the ending point is here. And see ya. Oh, I actually don't even see that. Oh, yes, I do. There it is. Interesting that that shows before the approach. So here's NCEA, so we're going to be between 10 and 8,000 feet, so we can come down to 9,000. We'll do there, and then from there, we're jumping onto the approach. So we're going to use NCEA as our target, because from here, everything from here down is going to be stepping down to get onto the approach. For example, a big skin here, we can do 6,000, but I don't even think we're flying to that one here, according to this, which is really odd. I'm sort of wondering why those waypoints are missing, but that's okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to NCEA. That's going to be our target waypoint. Okay, our first target is going to be NCEA here. We're going to click on the feet window here, so everyone sees what I did there. Hang on a second. Back. There's NCEA, and we're just going to click there. And we're going to type in our target altitude. We want 9,000 feet by the time we reach this point. So we're going to hit enter. Okay, now you can see all the corresponding waypoints above have now been populated up until that point. Now here's what we got to check. So we have Drake, Dark, can't remember which one it is. Scroll up a little bit. What we're going to be looking for is like Goodwill here. We have 12,087 feet. Alright, now you can see here we need to be between 12,000 and 9,000 feet. So we're slightly high at this point. So what we need to do is we need to edit that to at least 12,000. So just kick that down to there. Alright, now going back to our charts for a second, Bruiser, we need to be between 17,000 and 13,000. Let's make sure we're not breaking that. Okay, so we're good there. And then finally, coming back up, we have Mayor, 22,000 feet. We need to be between 19 and 25, so we're safe there. And Dark or Drake, which ironically enough, I don't see on our chart. Oh, there it is. Yes, I do. Right here, between 29,000 and 24,000. Okay, so that's the requirement there. But let's say we wanted to be at the 20,000 here, for example. We could do that too. But given what it is here, we can actually just leave it as is. Not a big deal. There's no restriction. There's nothing requiring us to be anywhere other than, well, and actually, I was wrong. So at Weiner here, we are required to be at 29,000 feet. So, which is probably why our descent won't start until we pass through. So any of these ones that are up here, that are blank, that's fine. It just means that they're not a part of the descent platform, or the descent plan, excuse me. So I can tell you that our top of descent is probably going to be near this Weiner waypoint. So now that we've got all that calculated, we've verified we're not going to bust any restrictions, we've made the edits that we need to make edits to make sure that we stay within parameters, we can now go to VNav and hit VNav enabled. Here you go. We now get a time to top of descent of 11 minutes. So in 11 minutes we'll be descending. And the active VNav waypoint, this is the first waypoint that we edited, okay, is Broadwell or Beadwell or whatever that is. Anyway. So the cool thing about this is we can also go back to the map. And we should be able to see our top of descent indicator. And there it is. Actually, it's right before, it looks like Drake. So we can see that right there. At least I think that's Drake. That one we can check. We can go to VOR, for example. We can see what it's called. Oh, I thought it said it. Maybe it doesn't. I thought it told us what it was actually spelled out as. Oh well. Anyway, I tried. So, there's our top of descent. So, if we come back into plan, go back to VNav window. I like to leave this window up. We have 10 minutes until our TOD. At 1 minute, we'll get an alert right underneath the CDI here. Actually, I think on the TBM, it's going to be right here. Sorry. But they'll say 1 minute till top of descent, at which point we'll begin slowing the aircraft down and making sure that we have our target altitude plotted up in the autopilot. So, basically, guys, what that means is that I will see you guys in about 9 minutes. Alright. So, first off, as I was telling you guys, we are getting into some pretty heavy clouds with some lightning going on. I know that's not a rare thing for Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it actually is out here in the real world. So we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to turn the inertial separator back on, and we're going to turn the anti-ice on. Turning the inertial separator on because we are in raining/icy conditions. I mean, if we look at the outside temperature, we're looking at negative 28 degrees Celsius. So that's pretty cold. And there is our top of descent within 1 minute alert. We've already got our first target of 12,000 feet in our autopilot, and here is the VNAV target. What we'll be doing here is pulling off some power. Start letting the aircraft slow down a bit. And as we reach our top of descent, we're going to be using vertical speed. Clear that master caution. Now the reason why we're using vertical speed mode and not VNAV, and I've seen a bunch of people's comments on some of these videos, why aren't you using VNAV, why aren't you using VNAV, and some of the comments are even pretty crappy. I want to emphasize, guys, in the TBM-930 at the time of making this video, VNAV is not enabled. It's not implemented. It does not work. So for people like somebody said, yeah, it works, you just don't know how to use it. Yes, I do, and no, it doesn't. It does not work in the TBM-930 at this time. All right, so let's go to vertical speed, and we are going to hit our vertical speed requirement. It's asking for 1,600 feet, so let's start bringing her down. There's a couple things we want to monitor here. This is our deviation indicator, letting us know how far either above or below. Think of it as the glide slope. Basically, what this is telling us is at our current position, we're supposed to be at this altitude, and we're currently at this altitude. So there's a couple things that you need to fix here. So the first thing we're doing is we're going to fix this, and how we do that is by descending a bit faster. So we descend much more quickly here. And you're going to see this caret rise up to our current altitude. There it is, coming up. And now if we pause for just a moment, as our deviation caret starts to line up with our altitude indicator, then we want to bring our vertical speed indicator back up with our target vertical speed. This is telling us the vertical speed that we should be at. This is the vertical speed that we are actually at. Okay, so once you get your deviation line or deviation indicator in line with your altimeter, then you want to get back onto your correct descent rate. Okay, so pause. So it starts to come up. Slowly start bringing that vertical speed back up, and now let's line it up. Because you can go the other direction. If this gets above your altimeter, then you need to slow your descent rate. Looks like we're not quite on it. There you go. And then from the most part, once you get to about here, you might have to make a correction here or there, but it's pretty straightforward from here. Pretty easy to descend, actually. So I'll see you guys again at 18,000 feet. I'll continue to manage our descent rate, make sure we stay on track. But I'll see you guys at 18,000 feet when we set our altimeter to the current pressure. And then I'll see you as we get closer to 13,000 feet where it's time to adjust our target altitude again, as well as set up our ILS approach. Alright, so we are approaching 18,000 feet. Now, it takes a little bit below before you can actually, like, for example, use the B key to set your altimeter, so about 17,500 is when we'll do so. But I want you guys also to be aware that as you descend, your speed is going to change. As your speed changes, your vertical speed is going to increase and decrease, and that's what can cause some of this deviation. But as long as you keep it relatively close, you'll be fine and you'll hit your target on time. So there's 17,600. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Not yet. There's no way we're still at 2,902. I don't believe it. There it goes, 2,979. Gosh, almost 1,000 feet below. That's crazy. All right, and so now you can see now we're below, so we need to come up a bit, and that's because of the altimeter change. So we're going to level out our descent just a bit, not completely. But wait for that again, those two to capture, and bring it back down. And it's really quite simple. You don't adjust it as often as you think you do. It has to be pretty extreme before you have to be concerned. And another place to look is right here. Where is it? There it is. So you can see our vertical deviation is only 24 feet right now. Okay, so I mean, it's got to get pretty extreme. This is time to bottom of descent. So we're at 2.5 minutes until we reach our target altitude of 12,000 feet. Now we can also change our VNAV direct. Oh, should have been able to. Guess I can. We'll wait for it to hit the next one then. Darn. Anyway, we'll ignore that part. It's not a huge deal. So let's start setting up for our approach. We've already got our speed bug set. We do want to set our minimums. So let's go to the PFD for a second and let's go to minimums. We're going to be using the 200 feet today for the radar altimeter. So trap that radar altimeter on, hit enter there. And then now we want to make sure our localizer is set as well. That is not what I wanted. We want radios. Oh, hey, I never turned on a transponder. Shame on me. Altitude reporting. Shame on me. Fail as a pilot. Alright, and so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the approach on our Navigraph. And we're looking for the ILS frequency. 11175 is what we're looking for today. So we're just going to get that in. It's already right here on nav2. So we can actually just use nav2. It's already even on the active box. Although, we could always just switch it here too. Transfer. So there we go. So we are set up for the ILS approach. And now they actually know that we're here. We can go back to our flight plan, or we can go back to the VNav. We're a minute away from our bottom of descent. Now at this point I am going to increase to what our target was, which was 9,000 feet. Because we're right on track, right where we're supposed to be. So let's keep it on coming down. And you can see now we're a little bit above it again. So we can increase that descent rate a little bit. See how the temperature is looking outside. You can turn that anti-ice off now. Should be fine coming in at this point. And you can see our active waypoint just changed to the NCEA, to the 9,000 feet target. So we were right on track, right where we're supposed to be, although we do need to descend a bit faster still. Beneath our target, or above our target. Back up. And then as we come around for the approach, we'll just be following the approach plate. And our goal is at I like to be at 5,000 feet. So zoom in here. Oh, wrong direction. So by this waypoint here, we want to be at 5,000. So I'll catch you guys as we come around the corner right about here, and that's when we'll start really getting the aircraft ready for landing. And one last thing here as we are coming up on 10,000 feet. Let's go ahead and get our lights turned on. Let's turn on, and let's turn some panel lights on, as I'm willing to bet this is, like I said, we may be in a night landing here, at the very least low sunset. You can see the sun out there. So, anyway, I will see you guys as we come around for our approach fix. So I did want to show you guys something kind of cool. Now, don't mind the altitude. I paused the sim, so naturally when I unpaused, my flaps were down, the throttle was off. Typical weird crap. But I was telling you guys that at I-like we need to be at 5,000 feet. So I entered the VNav and I added 5,000 feet. And if you look, it recalculated our top of descent. So it's once we get here, we'll get the 1 minute alert again, and be able to descend down to 5,000 to make sure where we're supposed to be. So just thought I'd show you guys that. I thought it was kind of neat. Alright, so the other thing we're going to do is we're coming around to the final leg here. Back to our flight plan, rotor procedures, go to the approach. Looks like it already activated, but I always like to double check. Sometimes there used to be an issue where it wouldn't activate, and then when you got to this user waypoint, your plane would just act ridiculous. And you can see our deviation indicator is coming down as we get closer to our top of descent. We can also switch our nav source to nav 1. Looks like we're still a little too far out to track it, so we're going to go back to FMS for now. How far are we? Oh, I guess so. I thought we were closer than we were. My mistake. Oh yeah, we're still 25 out. My bad. No biggie. So we'll just stay on track here. And we did pass that top of descent mark. So we go in vertical speed. Find our needle, start bringing it down. I'm also going to pull some power off to start slowing us down. And it took us out of nav mode, so let's get back in nav mode. I think that happened when I switched the source. Actually, even that doesn't make sense. It's interesting. I'm not sure what happened there. Always watch that stuff. Watch for your deviations real diligently. Because you can find yourself in a situation where you can control it pretty quickly if you catch it fast. We're going to increase our descent because our deviation's pretty far right now. And obviously on the approach we don't want to be too far out of bounds here. We're going to set for 5,000. Let's go back to vertical speed. Get that back down. And we're going to keep going down here. So this we're going to set it for 2,000 feet. A little bit of odd behavior happening here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. And it took us out of there again. Knock it off. Gosh. I don't know why it leveled out like that again. We'd already stayed below where we're supposed to. I didn't see it switch to altitude hold. Just letting that deviation line catch up a little bit. Increase a little bit further. I'm going to go ahead and double check our barometric pressure again. So 2972. There we go. Now it's better. That's more what we're looking at. And we're inside 15 miles. I think we should be good now to switch over to the VOR. The localizer, and we are. We're good. Nav mode stayed on that time. That's good. So now we're going to line up with the runway. As long as we're locked in, we should be able to switch to the approach mode. So let's switch over to approach. At 5,000 at I like we're supposed to be. At this point I'm going to switch. Oh, and it locked up a glide slope, so we're good to go now. So from here I'll see you guys at about 3,000 feet as we come in for the last stages of the landing. Another indication I wanted to show you guys real quick. You can see this Jamil to Wazep FAF. That's final approach fix. So I wanted to show you guys that real quick. I thought you guys would find that helpful. It lets you know that this is the final waypoint right before the approach into the landing. Alright, so we're at 3,000 feet. Final leg of the approach here. So I'm going to start pulling power back. Looking for 173 knots so we can set flaps 1. There we go. So flaps 1 coming down. We're going to also bring that landing gear down now. We're looking for our 85 knots for the approach. A little bit more power off. 128 knots, we can drop full flaps. So there's full flaps coming down. See our flap indicator here on the MFD. Now we're going to hit that 85 knots real quick, so I'm adding power. More power. Oh, that was a good one. According to the PAPI lights, we're a little below glide slope, but we're okay. And looks like our altitude says the same thing. Go ahead and disengage the autopilot. Disengage that yaw damper for landing. Be a lot easier to hold our position if it wasn't for that.
500.
There we go. So now we're on the glide slope. Windy day. Wouldn't be an overkill landing if we didn't have a bit of the space shuttle approach. Cutting power. We landed with a bit of a tailwind. That's what I was worried about with the approach. I forgot to double check our winds. That's alright. Still a good greaser. Start adding some wheel brake. Didn't worry about the reverse prop today. We obviously had plenty of runway to work with. Taxi off to the left here for the executive terminal. And flaps coming up. Clear the active runway completely. Come up top. Strobe lights off. Pulse lights off. Landing light to taxi. One of them is still on. There we go. Alright. And so that is it from here. We'll just taxi to our gate and we would shut the aircraft down. I hope you guys enjoyed this little flight. It's always fun to fly the TBM. Had a couple little weird incidents happen there, but nothing too crazy. Certainly nothing that prevented us from having a nice enjoyable flight in our TBM. So as always guys, I will see you in the next one. Take care folks.